Black CEO, denied his first-class seat. Minutes later, he grounds the entire plane himself. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. The sentence cracked across the boarding gate like a whip, sharp enough to cut through the hum of rolling suitcases, the buzz of departure announcements, the whisper of jet engines idling outside. Heads turned. A few passengers slowed their steps, sensing conflict like sharks scenting blood. The man at the center of it, tall, dark-skinned, impeccably dressed in a Navy travel suit, didn't move. His boarding pass glowed on the screen of his phone. First class, seat 1A, paid in full, confirmed twice. But the gate agent didn't look at the screen. She looked at him. Her smile was thin, stretched, brittle around the edges. "This line is for first-class passengers only," she repeated, each word dipped in the kind of politeness that cuts deeper than open hostility. "I know," he said, voice even, controlled. "That's why I'm here." She didn't blink. "Sir." First class isn't, for she hesitated, eyes scanning him from shoes to collar. "Passengers like you." A few people gasped. A businessman in a gray coat paused mid-stride. A teenage girl pulled out her phone, already recording, and someone in the back snorted a laugh, the kind meant to be quiet but not quiet enough. The PA system chimed in the background with forced cheer. "Flight 227 to Seattle is now boarding Group 1. It only made the moment colder. The agent straightened her jacket as if bracing herself behind a shield of corporate authority. "Please step out of the line," she said. "We cannot allow unauthorized passengers into the priority lane. If you'd like to request an upgrade," he raised his phone slightly. "I didn't request an upgrade. I bought the seat." She didn't even look. "Sir, that's not possible." Someone behind him muttered, "Here we go again." Another whispered, "Just let the man through." But the sound died quickly. Nobody wanted to get involved. A second employee, the supervisor, approached. His walk had the swagger of someone who enjoyed owning moments like this. "Is there a problem?" he asked, though his smirk said he already knew his answer. The agent gestured toward the man. "He claims to have a first-class ticket." "Claims?" the man repeated softly. The supervisor studied him with the casual arrogance of a man who'd never been questioned a day in his life. "Sir, first class is currently at capacity. We can offer you a seat in Economy Plus, if you'd like. It's only a short flight." "I'm sure it won't make a difference." He didn't respond at first. He just breathed slow, controlled, one measured inhale that seemed to shift something in the air around them. That's when the supervisor leaned in slightly and said, quietly but not quietly enough, "You people always try something." Silence. Real silence. The kind that drags the entire terminal into pause. Nearby, conversations stopped. A child tugging on his mother's sleeve froze mid-motion. A couple across the gate exchanged glances, the uncomfortable kind, somewhere between outrage and fear. The man didn't lower his eyes. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't step back. He simply looked at the supervisor the way a storm considers a coastline. And somehow, that was enough to make the supervisor shift his weight. "Before we continue, where are you watching from?" "Hello. I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. If you cause a disturbance, we will remove you from this gate." But the man just slipped the device back inside his jacket, eyes steady, posture unshaken. For the first time since the confrontation began, someone in the crowd whispered, "Who is he?" The gate agent swallowed. The supervisor blinked. And a faint tremor, not visible but almost felt, moved through the space around them. Something was shifting, something they couldn't yet see. And in less than 10 minutes, Flight 227 would no longer be going anywhere. The gate lights flickered. Not enough for the average traveler to notice, but enough for anyone paying attention to feel a pulse in the air, an interruption, a tremor, a shift. A row of monitors behind the counter refreshed all at once. their departure times blinking in unison before returning to normal. The agent frowned at the screen, tapping keys that suddenly responded half a second slower than before. A ripple of confusion passed across her face. The man didn't move. He simply adjusted the cuff of his jacket and watched everything unfold with the quiet focus of someone reading a pattern no one else could see. A mother holding a toddler whispered, "Something's wrong with the system." A businessman muttered, "Great, another delay." And someone near the charging station leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the boarding screens. Why are they resetting? The supervisor pretended nothing was happening, but the stiffness in his shoulders betrayed him. "Ladies and gentlemen, please continue lining up. Everything is normal." He said it too quickly, too sharply, too loud. Normal never needs announcing. At that moment, a flight attendant stepped out of the jet bridge, confusion etched across her face. She approached the counter, leaning in to whisper. The agent stiffened, nodding rapidly, her fingers flying across the keyboard in a useless attempt to override something far beyond her clearance. A small sound broke the tension, the soft chime from the man's phone. Just one note, almost polite. He didn't reach for it. He didn't need to. Whatever he had set in motion was already moving. The supervisor noticed it and blurted out, "Sir, put that device away. You cannot use unauthorized electronics near an active boarding gate." The man slowly turned his head toward him, calm, level, unflinching. "I'm not interfering with anything," he said. "Your system is handling that on its own." The supervisor opened his mouth to argue, but before he could, the overhead speakers crackled, releasing a static-laced cough that silenced the entire gate area. Then came the announcement. "Attention passengers of Flight 227. Boarding is temporarily paused due to a technical issue. Please remain in the gate area while our systems stabilize." A wave of confusion rolled through the crowd. People groaned, others cursed under their breath. A teenager with headphones muttered, "Man, I knew this flight was cursed." The agent blinked rapidly, staring at a new message flashing across her screen. "System hold code Echo 7 operations lockout." She tried again to override it. "Access denied." Again, "Access denied." Her face drained of color. The man stood still, posture relaxed, hands lightly clasped behind his back. Not triumphant, not smug, just certain. As if this was all a predictable sequence, and they were only on step 2. A young employee wheeled over a cart filled with bottled water, ready to placate irritated passengers. He glanced at the man briefly, and something in that calm expression made him falter. "I think he knows what's happening," the boy murmured to a coworker. The coworker shook his head. "No way. This is above his pay grade." But an older woman, sharp eyes, business suit, an instinct for hierarchy, studied the man longer than the others. "That's not a civilian's comm," she whispered. "That's someone who knows exactly who controls what." Another flicker ran down the row of monitors. The supervisor nearly snapped in frustration. "Can someone get IT down here? Why is everything lagging?" His radio crackled before he could finish. A voice came through, tight, confused. "Gate C12, we're showing an unauthorized system sync from your terminal. Is someone running diagnostics?" The agent's jaw dropped. "No. No one here is running anything." Passengers exchanged uneasy glances. The man remained silent. Something whispered through the terminal, then not a sound but a sensation. Like gravity settling. Like the room realizing who it was standing next to. And for the first time, the supervisor looked at the man not with arrogance but with fear. If anyone at Gate C12 had been close enough to watch the man's eyes, they would have seen something subtle shift inside them. Not anger, not ego, but the weight of memory. The kind that sharpens a person rather than breaks them. The kind that turns silence into power. A flight attendant approached the counter again, this time with urgency. Her voice trembled as she whispered to the gate agent, "Ops can't unlock the system. They said someone has override-level access engaged, but they don't know who." The agent stole a glance at the man. She didn't want to, she just couldn't help it. He stood there with the patience of someone waiting for the world to finish catching up to him, but the airport didn't know who it was dealing with. No one at Gate C12 knew they were standing feet away from Dorian Hale, the founder, majority shareholder, and chief executive of Apex Aerosystems, the company whose proprietary software powered almost 80% of the airline's operational backbone, ticketing, maintenance logs, aircraft telemetry, routing algorithms. His architecture touched all of it. He had written his first version of the system 22 years ago, at a folding desk in a cramped Detroit apartment where the heating barely worked and the neighbors argued through thin walls. Back then, he wasn't building an empire. He was building a way out. Head worked nights as a line cook and mornings hauling freight, squeezing in code between shifts, learning aviation infrastructure because no one would let him close enough to touch it. A young black engineer asking to shadow flight operations? They laughed him out of every room. Yet now, 2 decades later, they were unknowingly relying on his brain just to board a plane. "Sir," the supervisor snapped, trying to regain authority he no longer possessed. "If this delay is connected to your device." "It isn't," Dorian said calmly. "But the system is responding to something." "What something?" the agent asked, despite herself. Dorian didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because at that moment, down on the tarmac, an operations manager received an emergency alert he had never seen before. AeroCore Master Key signal detected standby for authorization. He froze. The radio fell silent around him. "AeroCore?" a technician whispered. "That's internal infrastructure, right?" "No," the manager said. "It's above internal. It's founder level." Upstairs, oblivious passengers fidgeted in stiff seats and scrolled through delayed flight memes, unaware that their entire aircraft had quietly stepped into a different chain of command, one that didn't run through the airline. It ran through the man standing at gate C-12. Back in the terminal, the crowd shifted uncertainly. Dorian's stillness unsettled them. Quiet people were unpredictable. They didn't feed on chaos. They calculated through it. A middle-aged traveler in a tan coat leaned toward his wife. "He doesn't look like someone who'd hack a system." His wife shook her head. "He looks like someone who built one." The supervisor's radio crackled again. C-12, ops requesting immediate ID verification of all passengers. And, ask if any VIPs or tech auditors are in your vicinity." The agent's fingers trembled on the keyboard. She looked at Dorian again. This time, she didn't see the man who didn't belong. She saw the gap in her understanding. The blind spot privilege had carved right into her training. She stepped closer to the supervisor. "Maybe we should ask him if—" "No," the supervisor snapped, pride wrapped tight around panic. "We don't need his help." But in the space between his words, the gate lights dimmed once more. "Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together." But Dorian Hale already knew what he needed. He reached into his jacket, retrieving the same matte black device, sleek, unbranded, almost ominous in its simplicity. It wasn't a phone the public could buy. It wasn't a model the airline could register. It was an interface built for a tier of access that existed above commercial systems, above federal oversight, above the organizational chart itself. He tapped the screen once. A silent prompt opened. A single question glowed. "Initiate Echo Protocol?" He didn't hesitate. "Plan Echo," he murmured into the device barely above a whisper. "Execute." One thumbprint, one pulse of light. One command routed through encrypted channels built into the very bones of the airline's infrastructure. Far below, in a control room sealed behind biometric locks, a systems lead jolted upright as his monitor flashed. Guys, we just received an echo call." His partner leaned in, eyes widening. "That can't be real." Echoes, founder-only clearance. It triggered. "From where?" The tech swallowed. "Gate C-12. Back upstairs, the gate lights dimmed again, not a mechanical flicker, but a deliberate shift, as if the system were lowering its voice. The supervisor finally snapped. "Sir, what did you just do? You cannot." Dorian raised one hand slightly, the gesture calm enough to quiet even the chaos. "Your system is making a routine decision," he said, "one it's long overdue to make." The supervisor bristled. "You think this is a game?" "You think tone cut him off, sharp and descending, echoing through the entire concourse like a warning bell. Gate screens went black, then rebooted. Then a message appeared across all of them at once. "Aircraft. Hold technical review in progress. No boarding authorized. Do not proceed. The crowd erupted. What the hell? We're already late. Is this a cyber attack? Somebody call a manager. But amid the confusion, something stranger happened. Multiple employees from different corners of the terminal began running, not walking, towards C-12. Operations vests, maintenance supervisors, security. Even an airline director wearing a badge that rarely left the executive wing. The agent whispered, "Why are the directors coming down here?" Her coworker shook his head. "Because Echo Protocol, that's above us. That's above everyone." She turned, looking at the man she had dismissed only minutes before, and for the first time, she saw him clearly. Not a passenger, not a customer, not an inconvenience, but authority. True authority, the kind that didn't need shouting, or threats, or raised hands. The kind that lived in silence and precision. An airline director stepped through the crowd, breathless. Her eyes scanned the gate, then locked onto Dorian with a jolt of recognition so strong her posture visibly changed. "Mr. Hale?" she said softly. The supervisor froze. The agent's lips parted in shock. A few passengers turned, whispering. Dorian didn't answer. He didn't need to. The director hurried closer. "Sir, we didn't know you were traveling today. You should have been flagged for priority escort." "No one informed us," her voice faltered as she caught the coldness in his eyes, not anger but clarity. "This is unacceptable," she continued quickly, turning toward her staff. "Reset the access hierarchy. Lock the gate. Full compliance until Mr. Hale gives instructions." The supervisor opened his mouth to object, but she cut him off without even looking at him. "You!" she snapped. "Step away from him." Dorian finally spoke, quiet, measured, controlled. "The system is entering review mode," he said. "Let it finish." The director nodded instantly. "Of course, sir." And around gate C-12, a realization washed over every witness. The man they mocked, the man they doubted, the man they tried to push aside, had just taken command of the plane without raising his voice. And the airline, every screen, every system, every employee was obeying him. What happened next didn't feel like an airline delay. It felt like a shutdown. The kind that starts as a whisper in the wires, then climbs the walls, then becomes a presence. Something almost physical settling over every device connected to the system. A new chime echoed overhead, not the soft, apologetic tone meant for passenger announcements. This one was deeper, sharper, authoritative. The gate screens refreshed again, this time slower, like they were breathing. Then a batch of diagnostic codes scrolled across the bottom line, codes no civilian would recognize. But one person did. Dorian watched them flash. VX-14, latch lock, route chain, core hold. The airline's spinal cord was bracing itself. The agent's hands trembled as she reached for the radio. "Ops, this is C-12. We just lost manual control." Requesting immediate override clearance. The radio crackled back with a voice that sounded more tense than helpful. "Negative, C-12. There is no override. The system is in founder level hold. Stand by and do not attempt to reset anything. Founder level." She glanced at Dorian again. The meaning clicked, hard. "That can't be right," she whispered, almost to herself. "Founder level? That's him?" The supervisor refused to believe it. Pride is a stubborn thing, especially when it's cracking. "This is ridiculous," he said, stepping toward Dorian like a man trying to reclaim territory already lost. "You can't just disrupt an entire flight because you didn't get your seat." Dorian didn't step back. He didn't flinch. He simply met the man's stare with the calm of someone standing on the correct side of truth. "The system isn't reacting because of my seat," he said. "It's reacting because of your decisions." Before the supervisor could respond, a metallic groan rolled through the jet bridge loud enough to stop conversation in its tracks. The flight attendant at the doorway startled, clutching the frame. "The cabin just locked," she called out shakily. The internal doors sealed themselves. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Airplanes didn't do that unless something told them to. Down on the tarmac, mechanics circled the plane like it was a live wire. They checked landing gear. They checked hydraulic lines. They checked things that had nothing to do with boarding. But the messages on their handheld screens all said the same thing. "AeroCore, hold active, do not touch aircraft." Passengers grew restless. A child cried. A businessman groaned into his phone. No, I don't know what's going on. Something major. Then more footsteps thundered toward the gate. Security. Operations chiefs. IT leads in orange lanyards that never see daylight. A man with a badge so high level the supervisor unconsciously stepped aside. This man, tall, severe, the kind who handled crises with clipped sentences and expensive consequences, approached Dorian with the respect of someone approaching a judge. "Mr. Hale," he said, voice lowered, "we've confirmed Echo protocol activation. All systems are in protected mode pending your clearance." Passengers looked at each other. Someone whispered, "Wait, he's the one controlling this?" Another murmured, "Has not just a CEO. Has the guy." The serious man continued, "We're prepared to reroute crew, freeze dispatch, and ground adjacent flights if necessary." The supervisor's face drained of color. "You can't be serious. It's just one." The director cut him off sharply. "You do not speak." But Dorian didn't raise a hand, didn't smirk, didn't even look at the supervisor. His voice was level when he answered the operations chief. "No aircraft controlled by my system takes off while its staff is engaging in bias-based negligence. The system simply executed its safety logic. I haven't even acted yet." The words hit the gate like a pressure wave. Passengers stopped complaining, employees stopped moving, and the supervisor, once loud, once smug, now stood small, shrinking into the space behind the counter. Because only now did he understand. The flight wasn't delayed. The plane wasn't stuck. The airline wasn't confused. The system was waiting, waiting for one man. And that man had finally stepped into the light. The announcement hit like a hammer. "Attention passengers. Flight 227 is now grounded until further notice. Please remain at gate C12. Grounded. Not delayed. Not paused. Grounded." The word spread through the terminal like a ripple across glass. Clean, sharp, merciless. People shot up from their seats, phones raised. Voices collided in anxious waves. "What do you mean, grounded? We have connections. This has to be a mistake." But no one missed the timing. The grounding happened the moment Dorian spoke, the moment he stepped forward, the moment the system recognized him. A woman in a red blazer pressed a hand to her mouth. "Is he the one causing this?" Her husband shook his head. "No, Hez the one stopping it." Gate C12 had become a stage, and every eye was on the man they'd tried to push aside. Operations staff circled like planets around a silent sun, orbiting Dorian with the instinctive respect reserved only for people who could change the outcome of an entire industry with a sentence. The director approached him again, tablet in hand. "Mr. Hale, the aircraft has entered full diagnostic freeze. Flight deck reports a complete lockout, no manual controls, no external overrides." She swallowed before continuing. "Only the system itself, or you can release it." Passengers nearby heard that. The whisper that followed felt electric. "He can release the plane? Wait, so he's the only one? Who is this man?" Meanwhile, the flight crew pilots in crisp uniforms emerged from the jet bridge, confusion tight across their faces. The captain scanned the crowd until his eyes landed on Dorian. Recognition, not from sight, from context. "You're Mr. Hale?" he asked cautiously. Dorian nodded once. The captain immediately straightened his posture, lowering his voice. "Sir, the aircraft flagged a code Echo 7. I've never seen that in 20 years. We can't initiate any startup procedures." "You're not supposed to," Dorian replied quietly. "The system is protecting itself." The supervisor, still refusing to surrender his pride, stepped forward again. "Protecting itself from what?" he demanded. "From a seat issue? From a customer who didn't like the answer he got?" The captain turned on him sharply. "Do you understand what code Echo is?" "I know enough." "No, you don't," the captain snapped. Echo means the system detected mishandling, misconduct, or a breach of operational integrity. That triggers an automatic aircraft freeze. The director added, voice low but lethal. "It means the system believes this flight is unsafe to depart under current human oversight." All at once, the weight of that statement sank in. Passengers who had been angry now went quiet. A few even stepped away from the supervisor like his proximity might be dangerous. Someone whispered, "So, the plane grounded itself because of them?" Another muttered, "This is bigger than customer service." The supervisor tried to salvage himself. "Look, we're making a scene here, Mr. Hale. I'm sure we can resolve this professionally if you just—" Dorian finally turned to face him fully. "It would have been resolved professionally," he said, "if professionalism had been offered. No anger, no raised voice. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together." Slow, deliberate, inevitable. The same supervisor who had smirked minutes earlier now looked like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, watching the ground crumble beneath him. And Dorian, he didn't watch him fall. He simply turned away, giving the man nothing, no reaction, no satisfaction, no acknowledgement. Silence was the verdict, and the system had already delivered the sentence. For a moment, Gate C-12 stood suspended between two worlds. The old one, where appearance dictated authority, and the new one, where truth surfaced like a rising tide, unstoppable and cold. Then the dam broke. A senior airline executive, dark suit, four-striped ID badge, expression sharpened by crisis, arrived at the scene. The crowd instinctively parted for him. Even the director straightened when she saw him. "Where is he?" the executive asked, scanning faces. The director gestured with a slight tilt of her head. The executive followed her line of sight and saw Dorian Hale. Everything in his posture changed. A quiet panic, a swallowed breath, a sudden awareness that the airport itself had just stepped onto sacred ground. He approached with reverence, not urgency. "Mr. Hale," he said, bowing his head slightly, We had no record that you were flying commercially today." Dorian didn't answer. The executive's voice stalled, as if unsure whether he had earned the right to speak a second sentence. The passengers exchanged looks. "Wait, he's really someone?" "No, he's not someone. He's authority." "Why would a guy like that fly first class? Wouldn't he own the plane? Maybe he does." The executive continued, choosing his words carefully. "Our systems flagged a founder-level echo. That override can only be triggered by your credentials. I want to express our deepest apologies for—" He hesitated, eyes flicking toward the supervisor who had been escorted away moments earlier for the misconduct. The gate agent, still pale, finally spoke. "Sir, we didn't know. We really didn't know who you were." Dorian looked at her, not cruelly, not kindly, just with the clarity of someone evaluating a truth he'd already learned too many times. "You weren't supposed to know who I am," he said quietly. "You were supposed to know how to treat people." The words silenced the entire terminal. Not a rebuke, not an insult, a lesson. The kind that echoed louder than any raised voice. The executive stepped in quickly, voice low but urgent. "We've already alerted headquarters. A review team is en route. Mr. Hale, please allow us to escort you to a private lounge while we—" But he trailed off because Dorian wasn't looking at him. He was looking at the jet bridge, the aircraft, his aircraft. Not by ownership of metal and engines, but by the architecture of code and systems he had birthed from nothing. Systems now holding that plane in its grip like a parent shielding a child from harm. The captain approached again, hat tucked under his arm. "Mr. Hale, if I may." Dorian turned. "My crew didn't know what happened before we were called," the captain said softly. "But whatever this was, thank you." Dorian raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For stopping us from taking off under compromised judgment," the captain replied. The crowd shifted. People didn't whisper now, they listened. Because this wasn't a power flex, it was a fact. The system had reacted not to ego, but to danger. Bias at a gate meant bias in operations. Bias in operations meant compromised safety. The plane had grounded itself because trust had been breached. The executive cleared his throat. "Mr. Hale, corporate is asking if you wish to release echo hold or enact full audit." A gasp rippled through the watching passengers. "Full audit? That shuts down flights, right?" "It shuts down everything." Dorian didn't answer right away. He breathed, slow and controlled, and in that breath lived 20 years of being underestimated, questioned, second-guessed, not for what he built, but for what he looked like while building it. A young boy, maybe 9, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, watched him with wide eyes. His mother whispered, "That man, He's the reason the planes fly safe. And that more than the crowd, more than the executive, more than the captain made Dorian's jaw tighten. He couldn't let arrogance go unchallenged, but he also couldn't let thousands of travelers suffer for the ignorance of a few. He turned back to the executive. "Not yet," Dorian said. The director blinked. "Sir, Echo Hold stays," he continued. "But the full audit can wait." Another ripple of tension. Then he added, "Not until after I speak to the crew who thought denying a passenger dignity was standard procedure." Silence swept the terminal. Not shocked silence. Respectful silence. Because it was crystal clear now he wasn't here to embarrass anyone. He was here to reset the floor. The hallway behind gate C-12 was never meant to feel like a courtroom, but in that moment, it carried the weight of one. Every step the airline's executive team took felt heavier, slower, as if the building itself knew judgment was coming. Dorian didn't speak as he walked. He didn't glare, didn't posture, didn't let triumph stain his expression. Power was quiet on him. Heavy. Natural. Inevitable. The director opened a conference door off the concourse, usually reserved for pre-flight briefings or conflict resolutions that didn't make the news. Tonight, it would serve a different purpose. Inside, the supervisor Gray was already waiting, pale, uneasy, shrinking into a chair too big for the posture of a man who'd been stripped of certainty. 2 HR officers flanked him, tablets ready. A security representative stood in the corner, arms folded. Behind them, a window looked over gate C-12, where passengers still whispered Dorian's name like an unexpected headline. When Dorian entered, no one told him where to sit. He sat wherever he wanted. The executive cleared his throat. "Mr. Hale, we're prepared to begin the incident review whenever you are." Dorian looked at the supervisor, and that alone made the man's breath hitch. "Tell them what you said," Dorian said softly. Gray blinked. I don't remember." Dorian leaned back slowly. "Then I'll refresh your memory." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You people always try something." The room froze. HR's stylus halted midair. The director's eyes closed in quiet disgust. Gray's shoulders collapsed inward, exposed by the precision of his own words. "I didn't mean—" "You did," Dorian replied. And the system responded accordingly. Gray swallowed. "I didn't know who you were." "That's the point," Dorian said. "Respect isn't conditional." The HR officer cleared her throat and projected a document onto the wall. Dorian didn't look at it, but everyone else did. "Misconduct report. Immediate suspension pending final review. Bias-based denial of service operational compromise. Resulting in code Echo Hold." The words looked heavy even as pixels. Gray shook his head, hands trembling. "Wait, suspension? For this? I've been with this airline for years," Dorian interrupted. "Long enough to know better?" Gray tried again. "Please, sir, I just made a mistake." Dorian held his gaze steady, unblinking, stripped of anger but full of something far sharper. Truth. "You didn't make a mistake," Dorian said. "You made a choice." The silence afterward wasn't empty. It was a verdict. HR continued, voice firm. "You are suspended effective immediately. Pending final review, this incident may escalate to termination with cause." Gray sagged back, the last thread of arrogance draining out of him. Dorian didn't celebrate it, didn't smirk, didn't even linger. He just turned slightly, eyes shifting toward the agent, the young woman who had stood beside Gray earlier at the gate, shrinking into herself now. "You," Dorian said gently. "Step forward." She did, hesitant, trembling. He didn't raise his voice. He offered something worse for someone who wished to hide. Honesty. "You followed his lead," Dorian said. "Not your training, and not your conscience." A tear slipped down her cheek. She brushed it away fast, embarrassed. "I'm so sorry, sir. I wasn't thinking." "You were thinking," Dorian corrected. "You just weren't questioning." The director stepped in. "Mr. Hale, she will be placed into mandatory retraining and oversight." "No," Dorian cut in quietly. The agent's breath caught. Then Dorian added, "She stays." The HR team exchanged glances. "Sir?" the director asked. "She learns," Dorian said, "not by being removed, but by being better, and by remembering this moment." The young agent broke, nodding quickly, gratitude shaking through every part of her. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I won't forget this. Dorian looked away, not out of dismissal, out of completion. The conversation was done. The consequences were delivered, not vengeance, correction. He stood, and the room made way for him without command. No one asked what he would do next. They already knew. Whatever Dorian Hale decided would become the next line in the airline's operating manual. Outside the glass wall, passengers watched as he stepped back toward the concourse, the crowd parting like a tide granting passage. Consequences had been served, but the story wasn't finished. Because the plane, the one frozen in silent obedience, was still waiting for his word. When Dorian stepped back into the terminal, the atmosphere felt different, lighter for some, heavier for others. Conversations shifted into whispers that skated along the polished floor, weaving around passengers who now looked at him with a mixture of awe, gratitude, and the slow-blooming understanding that they had just witnessed a rare kind of justice, not the loud kind, not the courtroom kind. The kind carried out in real time by a man who did not need permission to correct the world around him. The director hurried to match his pace. Mr. Hale, we're ready to release the aircraft from Echo Hold whenever you request it. The crew is standing by. Dorian didn't slow his steps. Has the replacement team arrived? He asked. Yes, sir, she replied. A new supervisor and 2 additional attendants are already stationed at the gate. We've also initiated internal briefings regarding bias compliance, crew reassignments, and he lifted a hand slightly. I didn't ask for all that. She nodded quickly. Understood. But corporate wants you to know the incident will be handled at the highest level. Dorian paused, turning toward the window overlooking the aircraft. The jet stood motionless, patient, almost reverent in the wash of sunset streaking across the tarmac. A thin red glow slid along its fuselage like a heartbeat. He stared at it for a moment, then said, "Release the hold." The director tapped her tablet with swift, precise motion. Down on the runway, maintenance teams stepped back. A chime resonated through the gate area as the diagnostic locks dissolved, and the aircraft came alive again. Lights flickering, systems rebooting, hydraulics exhaling like a creature waking from sleep. Passengers gasped softly. Someone whispered, "He just turned the plane back on." Another murmured, "He didn't yell, he didn't threaten, he just fixed the entire world around him." The director exhaled shakily. "It's done, sir. The captain is preparing for boarding." Dorian nodded, but he didn't move toward the gate. Instead, he turned away. "Have my car brought to the private access ramp," he said. "You're not flying out?" the director asked, startled. Dorian glanced at the gate at the crowd that still watched him, at the agents who stood straighter now, at the new supervisor who looked like head aged years in 20 minutes. "I've seen enough for one day," he said. "Send my regards to the crew." He walked down the concourse in calm, even strides. The passengers stepped aside instinctively, not in fear, out of respect. Out of the kind of recognition people give to someone who had proven that dignity is not a costume worn for special occasions. It is armor. Near the end of the hall, a soft voice pulled him back. "Mr. Hale?" It was the young agent the one had chosen to keep. Her uniform was still rumpled, her mascara smudged from tears, but something in her eyes had steadied. He stopped. She swallowed hard. I wanted to say thank you. Not for sparing my job. For showing me what I was supposed to be doing in the first place." Dorian looked at her for a long, quiet second. "You weren't hired to judge people," he said. "You were hired to serve them. All of them." She nodded, eyes watering. "I understand that now." "Good," Dorian said softly. "Then start over." He didn't wait for her reply. He didn't need it. He continued toward the private exit, where a sleek black sedan was already pulling up beside the restricted corridor. As the door opened, a gust of cool evening air swept in, carrying the distant sound of taxiing engines punctuating the final chord of a day that had started with humiliation and ended with clarity. Dorian paused at the door, glancing one last time through the terminal glass. The plane he had grounded now stood ready. Passengers were lining up with a different kind of silence, thoughtful, humbled, shifted. The crew handled them carefully, respectfully, correctly. A world nudged back into alignment. His driver spoke softly. "Sir, shall we head to the private hangar?" "Yes," Dorian said, lowering himself into the seat. "There's work to do." As the car eased away, the terminal lights glowed behind him, and for the first time all day, he allowed himself the quietest exhale. Justice hadn't needed noise today. Just precision. And the unshakable truth that power, real power, moves best in silence.